Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I am Jake.
And this is the Bible Reloaded.
And today we are watching Do You Believe?
Yeah, if you didn't know, the new movie, God's Not Dead 2 is coming out, and it's actually made by the same company that made this, and of course God's Not Dead, our first movie review, so we thought now is a great time to do one of their other movies, Do You Believe? And if you haven't seen it, it's both better and worse than God's Not Dead.
This is like hooking up with the girl you lost your virginity to 15 years later at like the high school reunion.
Then you remember she has a weird snaggletooth and she smells funny, but like at the time it was like
alright. It's both good and bad. Like she's better at sex now and so are you, but also she's 15 years older and so are you. So now you guys are both gross.
So yeah, if you haven't seen it, by the way, the trailer for God's Not Dead 2 is out. If you want to check out us looking at the trailer for God's Not Dead 2, you can look at that right at this link. Look at the link. There it is. Look at it. And there it goes.
Did you make it a chain again? Did you make it a chain? Because people are really confused about if that's a link or not. People don't get the reference.
No, it's not a chain anymore. It's the actual thing. Okay.
It was a chain last time. All right, anyways. So basically, all you need to know going into this film is it's pretty much the crash of Christian films. The gay one?
I haven't seen Crash, so...
Crash is like, it's just a bunch of actors and actresses, and they all have different storylines. They all meet in the middle at one climactic event.
Is it a crash?
It may be a crash. I don't know.
Oh, then it's definitely this movie, because that's literally the plot of this movie. It's a disparate characters and different stories coming together via car crash.
Anyways, you ruined the that was a spoiler. Everyone was looking forward to the end of this movie, I'm sure. Anyways, don't worry about that. That's not really an important plot point. Continuing forward.
So the movie begins, and as we said, it's brought to you by Pure Flix, who gave us such great movies as God's Not Dead, and What If, also starring Kevin Sorbo.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for Sorbo. He had 2 jobs recently. Good.
And it begins with a quote, as most Christian movies do for some reason. I think we've talked about this in other reviews, but I don't know why. Every Christian movie goes to that, like, middle school when you start to learn how to write a paper, attention getter. They're like, how do you start it?
You know, I feel like every single one of these directors or screenwriters used to be, like, a middle school English teacher. Or, like, the drama coach. They're like... If only I had my shot in Hollywood, I'd be there right now, but instead I'm in this shithole of a town teaching kids how to make attention getters. And he's pretty much just like, I don't know, use a biting quote from Martin Luther King Jr. or something, or Einstein.
The only thing worse than starting with a quote like this would have been if they said, Webster's Dictionary defines faith as, and then like went from there.
Or in a time.
We get it, valedictorians everywhere, stop it. Anyway. So it begins with this narration. If you remember Married with Children, you know Al Bundy's neighbor, not the first guy, but the second guy?
Yeah, that's him.
He's the narrator in this, and he's also a pastor. And he's giving this sort of strange, almost Christian noir speech about why people are drawn to cities. We're about to see the story of 12 different people and how their lives are affected by this cross that's like above this stupid bridge. I think it's New York. Is it New York, did they say?
No, we're gonna go East Coast town.
And the thing you need to understand about this movie is, since it has 12 main characters, it's incredibly hard to follow. So if at any point here when we're explaining what happens you don't understand, don't worry, we didn't understand either.
It jumps around a lot. It tries to stay cohesive. It tries. I noticed that sometimes they'll say things, then they'll show the character that kind of reflects upon, but only like 50% of the time.
What happened was it looks like they had like 6 or 7 shitty Christian movie scripts, and they're like, all these, none of them are good enough. They're not as good as God's Not Dead. So what we're going to do is throw them all in a blender and just have 7 Christian films happening at once, and then that'll bring people in. And I guess it did. I think it made money, so...
Sounds about right. And going into this, by the way, I will say this is the best acted Christian film I've seen in a long time. One of the worst written. One of the best acted, though.
So the story itself actually begins very clumsily, and Sean Astin has joined the movie to prove that you can fall pretty far from one of the most profitable franchises of all time. If you've ever wondered how high you can soar before falling so low, there you go. Sam to shitty doctor in this movie.
Yeah, and he's a super big douchebag since the whole Frodo thing. I think Samwise just needed time to reflect on his life. Instead, he chose the medical profession, and now he's just being an asshole to patients.
He's sort of the diet Kevin Sorbo of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
He doesn't really have a redemption, though. He's just an atheist who is an asshole. He's more like the Dean Cain. He's the Dean Cain of this movie.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So he gets a patient that comes in who apparently tried to commit suicide. They ate something they're allergic to, and he kind of makes fun of it. He's just being a dick, because clearly atheists do not care about suicidal people because, I don't know, evolution bad.
Yeah. Is that Lava Girl?
Yeah, that's Lava Girl. That is the Spy Kid herself, Alexa Vega. So, feel free to be both aroused for your 12-year-old self and disappointed for your now self. So we kind of cut away from this, and the nurse that was also present there walks into the hall. She runs into her husband, who is an EMT, and they're stressed out about money and blah, blah, blah. I can't tell you more, though, because the way this movie is structured, you can only have 1 minute of everyone's story at a time, so it never makes sense.
It's pretty much the money dynamic they had in Fireproof between Kirk Cameron and his wife, except I don't think Bobby here is addicted to porn. He could be, but they don't talk about it.
So we cut to the waiting room of the hospital, and this old couple is walking through, and there's this old man, and the old man is essentially talking about, I don't need a doctor. He's coughing the whole time. He clearly needs a doctor. He's like 60 or 70 years old. He could die.
You're wrong! That's Lee fucking Majors. He is the $6 million man, Hugo. He needs not the medicine of a normal man. That's his immune system.
What bugs me about Lee Majors in this movie, he says to the wife and whoever was with him, like, I don't need to see a doctor. When it's my time, it's my time. If God wants me to go, there's nothing gonna keep me here. If that were the case, we wouldn't have invented medicine, because medicine would be ineffective, because God would be like, nah, like you're going in for a layup, but God's there and smacks it out, like, cancer treatment. This cancer's from me.
Not in my house.
In the same waiting room, we have this guy named Joe, big dude, tattooed dude.
That's the Boz! Do you know who the Boz is, Hugo? That's Brian Bosworth, former shitty NFL linebacker, and he makes an appearance in this film. A huge appearance. Apparently the Boz has deep remorse for his super rad tribal tat he got in college with his bros after drinking Jaeger bombs in Cancun, though, because he's like, he looks at his tat and he's like, nah, I was a bad guy.
I think when he's talking to this kid, it's supposed to be endearing, but his performance, especially now that I know he was a football player...
He's poor.
It's not very good. The performance is not doing this guy's anti-pedophilia rating any favors.
No, and basically the idea is she's in the waiting room, and her mom wants to get her treatment. The Boz is ahead of the little girl on the list, and he looks over to the guy at the stand, and he's like, the Boz will not stand idly by and allow that neckbeard motherfucker to ignore this way too trusting of strangers little girl suffer through the common cold. Boz is a nice dude. Also, by the way, pointing it out, Sybil Shepherd did not age well. She looks like Charlize Theron in Monster. Have you seen that movie?
No.
So, well, she's a hooker that kills men.
So now we're back with the old man and his wife, who originally I thought was his daughter. That's how different in ages they looked to me.
Lee Majors, like, even though Sybil Shepherd not looking great, Lee Majors doing okay for himself.
So they get in the car, and the pastor, Al Bundy's neighbor, who was at the beginning, gets in the car with them too, and the old man is giving his bullshit. We're all gonna die someday. Shut the fuck up, Lee Majors. You won't. You're full of bionics. You are above all of us.
So they drive by this homeless girl, and the pastor looks over there and then sort of kind of keeps driving by. And in my head, I know he was being sympathetic, but in my head I thought that he was thinking to himself, why doesn't she just get a job? Like, this generation's so lazy. When I was her age, I already killed like 13 Viet Cong with nothing more than sheer will and fresh gook heroin.
So then there's a street preachers walking around at night with this cross, and this is sort of a focal point of the movie. This is the thing that sets off the chain of events that will change everyone's lives forever.
He's the catalyst. And did you know his name, Hugo?
No.
That actor is Delroy Lindo. He's been in stuff. Gone in 60 Seconds. The Core. Other things.
Neither of those movies count as movies.
The Core. They restart The Core.
I understand. They start the core of planet Earth after something happens.
And Gone in 60 Seconds was a movie with Nicolas Cage, so...
So at the stop sign, the street preacher with the cross goes up to Al Bundy's neighbor, stops and talks to him, and he's like, hey, do you believe in the cross of Christ? And the pastor says, yeah, I'm a pastor. And the guy's like, that's not what I asked. Like, I think it kind of is, but you get what he's saying. And he's like, do you really believe? Then what are you gonna do about it? And Al Bundy neighbor is kind of like, All right, I mean, I guess that's fair. Directly across while this strange Christian confrontation is happening, some gang members start stealing this white van, and the street preacher walks up to him, tries to stop him. And he's like, you know what you're doing? You're committing a sin. I'll pray for you. But it was like one of those super condescending I'll pray for you. It was
The weirdest
beautiful.
part about it, though, was, like, those gang members just committed a crime, and the guy stood there and had a conversation with him, like, I'm not here to shoot the shit with you, old man. I'm a gang member that doesn't shy away from puns, so you know I mean business with this gang activity / threat of violence, so you better make, like, a tree and leaf.
Yeah. That's about right. The gangsters in this movie are actually my favorite part of the movie. I wish the movie had been mainly about them.
It was really
because
good.
it's the kind of movie gangsters that were clearly written by a white Christian who's never been, like, in a downtown metropolitan area ever.
You know, I checked that to make sure that they were white. Indeed, they are both white.
So they drive away and they say he's a fool, and as they drive away, he has the best comeback in movie history. He says, yeah, a fool for Christ.
This is why screenplay editors are so important. This is the reason The Phantom Menace sucked.
So the pastor witnessing all this is like, oh shit, that guy's right. I haven't done stuff. I haven't stood up to criminals even though I have no power to do anything. So he goes back and he offers help to that homeless girl. If it were any other movie, I assume it was going to get really dark and he's going to like rape her or something. But I'm like, no, probably not. This is Al Bundy's neighbor. Like he's going to get second based at best.
Can we take a moment to look at the situation and be like, okay, I know he's a pastor, I know he's doing a good thing, but that does not give you the right to stop in the middle of fucking traffic without putting your four-ways on. Okay, that's inconsiderate for other drivers, and later on in the movie we will see you should really worry about your driving safety first, in this town specifically.
So back in the stolen van, we now focus on the gang members because they are part of the main story. And one of them, who's named Pretty Boy, by the way, I looked up all the names on IMDb.
Oh, yeah. Oh, by the other one? Criminal. With a K. I would have assumed a C, though. I would have assumed a C, but apparently this gang member, while picking his gang member name, was very specific to his friends. He's like, no, it's Criminal with a K.
So Pretty Boy is trying to talk to the other ones now. And he's saying basically, man, what if that guy's right? What if we're going against God himself, which is the least gangster thing I've ever heard anyone say.
And then they make fun of him. I was under the impression that all gang members, or not all, but a lot, were really religious, right?
Some probably are.
Because socioeconomically, like, that's kind of the demo for being religious.
So now back to the preacher has the homeless girl, who is pregnant, by the way. Yeah. Very, very pregnant. Very fake movie pregnant. Mm-hmm. Kind of to the point where it felt insulting, like they're like, we really need you to know she's pregnant. So she looks about 11 months pregnant.
At this point in the movie, I was watching it and I'm like, man, I hope we talk about abortions, because she's super late term. This would be great.
So he takes her back to his house, and the wife, being a huge bitch for no reason.
Wow, yeah.
Even though they have this huge house, it looks like an incredibly nice upper middle class residence, probably 3 bedrooms, maybe 4, at least 2 bathrooms for sure.
There's no need to shit that many times a day to warrant 2 bathrooms with just 2 people.
I know. She says no, the kid can't stay here. She doesn't really give a reason other than, I'm just uncomfortable with it. I'm a white suburban housewife and I'm uncomfortable with this underprivileged girl who needs help. So no, she can't stay with me. Yeah, so he decides to get her a hotel room. This was kind of a creepy scene too. Again, if it were any other movie, I'd kind of assume him to be like, oh, we got the room.
They cast it well, though. I did not get the creeper vibe from that guy whatsoever. If it was Delroy Lindo, I'd be a little concerned. Then they introduce the guy who's going to be our military vet, and you can tell he has PTSD, because when we show him for the first time, we play the sound effects of a chopper going down. Back
at the hospital, we're back in the waiting room with that little girl, whose name is Lily, by the way. Her and her mom say they're all right. They got her checked out because Joe let her go ahead of them. But they say the shelter's closed now because they're homeless. There's a lot of homeless people in this movie.
Yeah.
Joe offers them his home to them. The mom doesn't want to say yes at first because rape exists in this universe. But Lily says he wouldn't hurt them, which apparently is good enough for the mom because children are great judges of character, which is why kidnapping does not exist.
Right. Also, she calls him her guardian angel. No, kid, that's the boss. Doesn't she know that's the boss?
I didn't even know that's the boss.
And shouldn't she? But she should be a little bit stranger danger with people. She lives in the fucking streets.
You think so?
She has no survival skills whatsoever. No wonder her mom looks like she's gonna cry all the time in this movie.
This, by the way, starts what I would categorize this film as. God's Not Dead is a movie about atheism and atheists. I would dare say they try and pretend it's marketed towards atheists, though clearly it's not. It's a Christians, go see this movie, feel good about your beliefs because we're just going to reinforce what you already want to be told. This movie is even more hardcore that this is not marketed to anyone other than Christians, and it's just a, look how great Christians are, look at all the good things Christians do movie.
It really
Even
is.
though the people seeing the movie probably aren't bringing homeless people into their own homes, seeing a Christian do this fictionally in a movie makes them feel that being a Christian makes them a better person. And I'm not saying no one becomes a better person if they're religious, you can, though I think you can do it certainly without. But this movie is all about jerking yourself off. Yeah, you take that woman and her girl into your home, tell them it's because of Jesus Christ, and they're just edging in the theater the whole time. By the end, they'll shoot their Christ loads right onto that crucifix. It's gonna be beautiful.
After that scene, we cut back to the pastor who took the pregnant girl in, and he's sitting at his desk, and he's just poring over what Delroy Lindo, crazy cross-bearing man in the street, just told him. Do you believe in the cross? And then he crappily draws a cross on a piece of paper, and if you had just shown me that piece of paper, I'd have assumed the dying homeless 7-year-old drew it. It's total garbage.
So you know that nurse that was in like 30 seconds of the movie earlier with her EMT husband?
I do remember her.
The PTSD veteran is her brother, apparently.
Yes.
And he's back from Iraq, and he's done being, super depressed on a bridge, so he comes back to her house. Back to the homeless child / Joe story. Joe takes Lily and her mom to his apartment, which is kind of a skeevy apartment. It's, probably really expensive, though, because it's in the city. He leaves them there, and then he goes out on the street to sleep because he is an idiot.
If he's not gonna rape them, he has no reason to sleep elsewhere. He could just say, I'm not gonna rape you. I hope that's good enough.
So Dr. Rudy, back at the hospital, comes in to talk to Spy Kid's girl, who tried to kill herself, and he's like, oh, did you try and kill yourself? Clearly she did, but she says no and lies. He doesn't give a fuck, though, so he's like, okay, just don't do it again unless you want to see your name on a death certificate. I was in Lord of the Rings, look at me.
Did you notice that he walks into the room and sanitizes his hands, doesn't touch anything, walks out and sanitizes his hands?
No,
It
I didn't.
struck me as odd. He has, weird germophobia to supplement his douchebaggery.
So Alexa Vega, Spy Kid's girl, decides to walk away alone, and there's something about her dad. She's supposed to get picked up by her dad or something, but the nurse is like, we couldn't get a hold of him, and she is like, oh no, and she walks away all malaise and sad. And now we get narration again. The pastor narrates and he says, so that's the 12 characters, and here's where it really starts. Bear in mind, this is about a quarter into the movie.
This movie's 2 hours long.
I know, the juggling between the 12 characters somehow made it feel like way longer than it was. It was weird. It's only half an hour longer than God's Not Dead, but it felt like 4 times longer.
Oh, yeah.
So back at the pastor's church, it's now the following day, and he's doing his sermon, and this sermon is on the cross because he was inspired by that street preacher last night. He's doing this, the gang members, and it's night where the gang members are, so this is a weird nighttime church service.
It is, because at first I thought maybe it's not nighttime and they're just kind of jumping around in time, but later on, one of those gang members will show up in the middle of that service.
So I know some churches do nighttime services, it's just usually in movies they don't show them. But anyway, the gang members from earlier are getting ready to kill some other gang member. That gang member's name is Nefarious, by the way.
Fuck you, obvious white guy that wrote this. That's the worst gangster name ever. I thought Criminal with a K was the worst. Nefarious is the worst.
So the gang members are driving in their van to the house where Nefarious lives, and because they're bad at their job, they think the best way to do this is to run their van into his house.
It's the worst gang plan ever.
I don't understand what they even thought was going to happen. They're like, okay, yo, everyone got their seatbelts on? Because if we don't, this is going to hurt a lot. And then they crash into the building. Nefarious gets away.
Wait, but that's Nefarious, though?
Pretty Boy has a chance to shoot him, but chooses not to because they're setting him up as the sympathetic gang member. Yeah. But he does get the bag of money that they have. They never explain quite what the money's for, but you can assume it's for drug money or prostitution, something bad.
Yeah. And after this whole scene happens, the two brothers kind of talk, and they mention that they lost their other 2 gang members, whose names are Little B and 40. Now, if Pretty Boy, Criminal with a K, and Nefarious weren't already enough evidence to show you that a white man or white men wrote this, The gangster names Little B and 40 should probably be the clinchers there.
The cops show up because there's not really a subtle way to run a van into a building without alerting the cops. They chase Pretty Boy, who has the bag, all the way to the church. He hides the bag, like, behind the church, and he goes into the church, and Joe's there, because he works there, I guess. He assesses the situation, the quickest I've ever seen anyone assess any situation. He immediately is like, you gotta give up this life, brother.
It's because he was black. He was profiling him.
And he tells him to go into the church. Joe is now abetting a criminal, by the way, because the cops are in search of him and he's hiding him in the church.
Oh, yeah.
So Joe, who was a criminal before, now hiding someone involved in assault with a deadly weapon and robbery.
Well, they killed the other two murderers. He's an accessory to murder, B&E, and grand larceny. And they're like, nah, second chances, man. Second chances.
So the cops come in looking for the guy, but he's sitting in a pew and he's like praying to God, like, God, please let me not get caught by the cops for the crime I totally committed. It fucking works.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It works.
God is now aiding and abetting this criminal, which frankly, that's airtight. God's helping you get away with like murder and breaking and entering. You're getting away with it, probably.
Definitely. Pretty Boy goes out and there's a call made on his phone and it's criminal with a K. And when I saw this is the first time I had confirmation on what that guy's name was, because again, it's jumping around and stuff. And when I saw this, I thought, writers, it's okay not to have a gang name. A gang member can just be called Kevin. It's fine.
So now we finally get a new story starting, because the 4 we have right now aren't enough. This is the story of the EMT. This one reminds me a lot of Fireproof, actually.
It's very
This is Fireproof kind of if it were done about an EMT instead of a firefighter, and the story was a little bit mixed. So a dude is crushed under this thing. I don't know what it is. It's very Wile E. Coyote / Signs, though, because he's like crushed
it's like
in half.
Steamroller thing? Yeah, I don't know. It was superfluous. The guy probably should have been dead already.
Basically, he's dying if they move this thing.
Oh, yeah.
So he puts a cross in this dude's hands. He's the EMT and he's waiting for someone else to get there. Puts a cross in this dude's hands and's like, you need to accept Jesus into your heart. He proselytizes to him pretty hardcore. And the dude, like, becomes Christian in his final dying moments. This is the most fucking unprofessional thing I've ever seen. If you're an EMT, by the way, not allowed to do this. There's actually been actual court cases, which I assume this story is based off of, where similar things have happened, where a police officer or a fireman or an EMT, whatever, they try and push religion on the person. And you know what? I can sympathize. I can understand from the perspective of the person who's proselytizing. They think in the final dying moments of this person, they're giving them this gift of being Christian, going to heaven. But you got to take that out of it. If you're going to be a public servant like that, you can't do it. Even if it feels right to you or wrong to you to not do it, you can't. It's illegal. Don't do it. You're a douche.
Yeah. If the guy had asked for a prayer, I have no issue with that whatsoever.
No, absolutely.
If the guy's
That's
like, pray
fine.
for me, I would pray for someone if they were dying and I was holding their hand. And I'm an atheist. I don't know how to pray, but I'd be like, I hope you're going to be okay or something.
No, I probably would, too.
I'd give it a shot. I'd at least try to comfort the person. But if someone doesn't ask for that shit, like, you're a medical professional. Keep trying to do medicinal things. It's very important that you try to do your job, even if you can't. The best part about this whole episode is what his wife says, though.
Yeah, the wife of this dying dude comes up and is like, what is this cross in his hands? What are you doing? That would piss me off.
Yeah.
If I found out that, like, let's say my girlfriend, who's also an atheist, agnostic, whatever, if she died and I found out the EMT, like, spent her last moments preaching to her, I would freak the fuck out on them.
Right?
But what a disgusting thing to do.
The way the wife talks about it, though, she says, like, what is this? What is it? Like, she doesn't know? It's like, bitch, it's a cross. You see him every day. You're an American. So we go back to Lee Majors and Sybil Shepherd's house, and they're talking about how they had a dead child for a while, and maybe they should talk about it. And Sybil Shepherd gets all pissed off at Lee Majors, and this whole time he's got the face like, the $6 million man will not play your shit, Sybil Shepherd. And cut immediately. We don't get any more stuff until a little bit later after things happen. I don't like how this movie's edited. I kind of want to stick there for a little bit. He's not a bad actor. He's not that bad. But then we get the worst actor in the whole film, the Boz.
So back at Joe's house, Lily and her mom are looking for cereal, so they say, and they find this big fucking jar of money. Get a bank account, Joe. And also he's really coffee now, by the way. He comes in and they have a discussion, whatever. But all the coughing, this movie's really bad at being subtle, so you know as he's coughing into this handkerchief, he's gonna be gone by the third act, so it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And then they're talking, and it's like, I'm homeless, my husband died, I lost my job, and now I don't have anywhere to live. And then the boss says, yeah, but that's the best cup of coffee you've had in your whole life. And she said, it's pretty good. Yeah, you're right. It's like, coffee is not a home, Brian Bosworth.
In the coffee conversation, too, Joe also says God has a way of making bad things good, which is a real dick thing to say to a homeless single mother.
Yeah, that's freaking awful, Brian. And then right after that scene, the girl and the mom walk away, and she's like, thanks for letting us stay the night. And he's like, sure, no big deal. And he's standing in the doorway, and of course, he has the whitest towel you can possibly find. He coughs into it, and of course, there's blood on it, letting the audience know he has shit wrong with his lungs. That's how we know. In every fucking movie ever. We gotta come up with a better way to do that. Like, maybe if he just would say, there's shit wrong with my lungs! And then they walk away still. And he's like, no, seriously, I'm dying. She's like, thanks for the night.
So back with Spy Kids girl, she's calling her dad, and the dad is a huge douche.
Oh, yeah.
He makes her cry. She's like, please come and see me. Like, she's like begging him to come and visit her or whatever. And I guess she has problems with his new girlfriend or wife or something. They don't really go into it, but it's alluded to in her half of the conversation. And I actually felt kind of bad for her. Don't get me wrong, shitty character, badly written, and she actually seems pretty mentally unstable from what we see later, but I do feel bad for her, so I'll give this movie 1 point for that. So it's now at negative 4.99.
It was well acted, though. Like, that scene, she does a good job of not overly selling the cry. It sounds like she's fighting it back a little bit. So there's your tiny piece of corn in the turd that this film is.
So Dr. Rudy is now at dinner with his wife. His wife is a lawyer. They show he's an atheist because they haven't really addressed it by this point. They show it because he complains about people praying silently behind him in a restaurant, which is something I've never seen an atheist do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying no atheist has ever done it. I'm saying that this is a straw man representation of an average atheist.
I agree. He's very douchey about it. And his girlfriend's totally on board with it, though, which is sort of weird.
So now we cut back to that nurse's house with the EMT husband, and her brother with the PTSD is sleeping on the couch. She tries to wake him up, and he attacks her because of his PTSD. The husband EMT comes down and yells at him, like, "What are you doing?" He leaves, and he refuses to take money, but he does take a cross she gives him. So thanks, all those cold nights as a veteran on the streets.
Yeah.
This cross is going to help me out a lot.
Okay, neither of us are medical professionals. We run a YouTube channel, a shabby one. You know, it's not great. We're middling. We're doing all right. You guys are here, but you get it. You know what we're about. The tiny cross, not gonna prevent PTSD related episodes. And it's certainly not gonna prevent him from strangling tiny Latinas while he sleeps.
So the next day with the EMT, he's getting sued for preaching to the dying man. The chief of the fire department says he just has to apologize. Like, just say it's like a one-time thing and you won't do it again, and it'll probably go away. The union will be behind you, and with the union behind you, you'll be fine. It won't be a big deal. It'll go away. Maybe a little bit of monetary stuff, but that'll come out of the union budget or whatever.
Right.
And he says, no, I'm not going to apologize, and I will do it again. This guy is a fucking idiot.
He's so
like,
dumb.
even pragmatically speaking, if he wanted to do it again, like, the best way to be able to do it again would be to say, I won't do it again, and then do it again anyways. I'm not saying that's right,
Exactly.
It's not, but I'm saying he's bad at doing what he's trying to do.
He goes on to say, like, well, the guy is safe in heaven instead of in hell where he would have been if I hadn't gone. Safe in heaven, bitch. He's spending an eternity away from his wife, who obviously isn't a believer, his children, who presumably have not also been raised in religious environment, and have very little chance of ever becoming so because the idiot mother doesn't know what the fuck a cross is. And so this guy is safe, but forever segregated from the most important people to him. That sounds like the worst place to be. That sounds not like heaven at all.
So Pretty Boy goes back to the church where he stashed that bag of whatever, and he gets it, and he's gonna take it to his brother. But he spends the night at this hotel reading the Bible, and this is his come to Jesus moment. This is he's supposed to be inspired to become a Christian moment. But I'll tell you right now, as someone who reads the Bible fairly regularly, this is a weird Christian trope that I see in movies and stuff sometimes. The idea that someone can sit down with no knowledge of Christianity, read the Bible, and be inspired. You cannot.
You can't. You'd have to get so lucky. Like, you'd have to open to, like, the best red letters in the back of the book.
You'd have to. Most of the Bible is like genealogy and stuff, and stories that are fairly irrelevant to Christian life, so you couldn't just open a Bible and read all night and become a Christian. It would be very confusing, if nothing else, probably.
And if you look at where he opened the book, I looked at it, and I have my Bible right on my desk, as always, because we do the Bible study, and I opened my Bible to about roughly the part he opened it to, just judging on how much was left in the back of the book. At best, he's in like Leviticus or Samuel. He's not got a lot going on there. He's
not even in the Jesus stuff yet. He's in Old Testament. He should come out of this being like, you know what? Maybe Judaism is for me. Maybe I'll be a black Jew. That'll be my thing. Just him and Sammy Davis.
Sammy Davis.
So meanwhile, while this is going on, the veteran brother who ran away and Spy Kids girl happen to be committing suicide on the same bridge at the same time. Instead of killing themselves, though, they kind of look at each other and realize what the other is doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they realized. If I was on a bridge committing suicide, I would assume the other person was just, doing normal people bridge things, like, look at the beautiful river, not, I'm fucking desperate and want to end my life. I think 9 out of 10 people on bridges probably not trying to kill themselves.
9 out of 10? That's it?
9 out of 10,
man.
Yep. So instead of killing themselves, they decide to go have coffee. Okay, looking at Alexa Vega at this age, I concede she is attractive.
Oh, yeah.
She's not, I'll cancel my suicide attractive. So they discuss over coffee how neither of them are religious, but in a weird way that only Christians write atheists, where...
Yeah, it was super weird. And when she asks, she says, hardly. I'm a Latino man with a military background in the United States Marine Corps who has an extremely religious sister, so my odds are pretty low.
I always like that when they write atheists in these movies, they're always like atheists who doth protest too much.
Yeah.
Like when they're like, are you Christian? They're always the kind who are like, no, I'm not a stupid Christian. And don't get me wrong. Again, there are atheists like that, but they always go for the really extreme straw man version.
She calls him like, are you one of those religious nuts or something?
Yeah.
Like, we don't talk like that. Like, we don't even ask people about their religious beliefs more often than not. We don't care. If someone asks me if I'm religious, I usually go, no. And then that's the end of the conversation, and we continue to banter.
So back at the shitty motel, the pastor's wife from earlier goes to apologize for turning away the very, very pregnant girl and decides to take her home with them. This is the same hotel, by the way, that Pretty Boy is at, and he was reading the Bible all night. He gets a call from Criminal, and Criminal tells him if he doesn't bring the money, he's gonna come and find him, because, you can't just steal drug money from gang members, especially ones with the incorrect grammar in their names. You know how they get the incorrect grammar? Murders. Every time you murder someone, they change something to be grammatically incorrect in your name.
So he read the Bible all night. He read about the horrible things. I assume, because he's only like a quarter of the way into the thing, I assume he started from Genesis and ended up in like, I don't know, Samuel or something. Meaning that he read about Lot fucking his daughters, David's murderous rampage, and then Judges 19, where a Levite allows a concubine to be killed by a brutal gang rape. And then he cuts her up and sends it to his friends. I think, for everybody, including myself, but mostly for Pretty Boy here, whose name I don't know. Isn't it like Percy later or something? Something weird.
Something like that.
I think at this point he should just take Nefarious' money, which is also a poor gang name, fly to Tijuana, and snort coke out of a Mexican hooker's asshole, living happily ever after.
So now back at the hospital, Dr. Rudy is having lunch with his lawyer wife, and she's apparently the lawyer who's representing the wife of the dude who died, who the EMT was proselytizing to.
Wow, that sounded like the synopsis of like a soap opera.
Yeah, this movie is, oh god. See what I'm talking about, how this movie was like 6 Christian movies? You could have had a movie where it was just an EMT going up against the system for not letting him preach, or about a movie about a gang member changing his ways, or about a pastor with a pregnant girl he's helping. You know what I mean? It's a bunch of different movies put together. Anyway, they talk about the case a little bit and just make fun of it. Again, straw men, atheist things. This scene isn't quite as bad, but there's certainly notes of it hidden throughout the scene. You know what I mean? It's a lot of condescension. In their
condescension's
tone.
a good word for it. Next, we have a scene where the kid and the mom go to a homeless shelter, and then the $6 million man and Sybil Shepherd are there serving them macaroni and cheese, and they have some witty banter. The kid comes across as charming, and they invite $6 million man and wife over to have lunch with them or whatever. So they're talking, and they're basically like, "Why don't you come over and hang out with us and stay at the house a little bit, little girl and mom? Like, we have space." And then you just look at Sybil Shepherd's face right there. That's the face of a woman that just decided to steal a child.
So back at the pastor's house, the bitch wife, who's less bitchy now, talks to the pregnant girl about how she can't have kids, she's barren or whatever. They talk about how they were gonna adopt, but she thinks the mother should be there when the baby's born. So fuck you, all you unwanted children. I wasn't there to watch you come out of a vagina, so you don't get a happy home.
Yeah, that's so weird.
This movie is, if you can't fucking tell, alluding to the fact that this woman is going to adopt the baby that this girl is having.
Right.
This movie couldn't have been more telegraphed any harder if they literally mailed me the screenplay and said, hey, why don't you read this? So that night it's raining really hard and it's kind of shitty out. The $6 million man talks to his wife, is like, we need to go pick them up. And she's like, why? And he's like, I don't know, it's raining, and it's that point in the movie. They're sleeping in a fucking Gremlin, by the way, which is the raddest car to be homeless in, if you didn't know.
Pretty cool.
So they let him stay at their house. That night, the daughter is in bed with the mom, and she wants to pray to thank Jesus, which is a really weird thing to do if your kid wasn't raised religiously. That's kind of strange to me. I don't know why a kid would randomly want to do that. But the mom says, like, sure, whatever, we can do that, I guess, even though she's also not religious. The way they portray non-religious people, very strange in this movie. There are two kinds of people in these kind of movies. Non-religious people who are really Christians the whole time, and non-religious people who are the worst people in history.
I was gonna say the same thing.
This is the kind of person who is already a Christian, but just says they're non-religious for some reason.
Yeah.
So now Pretty Boy has this bag of money, the drug money, prostitution money, whatever crime money that the gang members have. He sees Joe, and Joe, of course, because it's a Christian movie and this person has just become a Christian, has to say, there's something different about you.
Right. Hugo,
okay.
I would just like to take this moment to ask you to refrain from referencing him as Joe, and please respect the man known as the Boz.
Okay, the Boz.
Thank you. Okay.
The Boz. I hate this trope in Christian movies where someone gets saved and the next time a Christian sees them, they're like, you look so different. Listen, guys, I'm not saying that thinking that Christianity is true is not going to change your behavior,
Right.
but one day of accepting that you think Jesus is a thing, that doesn't, like, change who you are as a person.
No.
Like, not really. It makes you reconsider how you look at yourself.
Sure.
I'm not saying it doesn't, and it might make you reconsider certain actions, but you do not physically change. No one knows except for you. Anyway. So he goes in to talk to the pastor with the money, and he says, like, I want to give you this money because I got saved. And the pastor says no at first because, you know, felonies. But then fucking...
The guy talks him into
is
it. Like, he uses a Judas thing. He's like, oh, you're right, Bible. You're right.
Yeah, after apparently Pretty Boy has read the Bible once this night at the hotel, starts using out verses talking about Judas and how they used the money for something else, and the pastor goes like, all right, you're right, we can take this drug money.
Okay,
so they use the Bible to justify taking criminals' money.
So
thanks, Jesus.
The difference being in the Judas story, there's a couple different versions of how Judas ends up right there. Sometimes he doesn't do that, but he feels guilty about making his friend die and then throws the money back. It's not like, let's put this money to good use message. It's, I'm ashamed of myself and I throw the money and then he dies. So that's not a very good Judas metaphor you got going on there, screenwriters.
So the gang members see him leave the church after they accept the money, because they can justify it, because of the Bible. And they tell Criminal, now Criminal is after him.
Criminal finna make shit pop off. Did I sound gangster? Did it work? Did it work, Hugo?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, I got street cred.
Meanwhile, Lily is bonding with that older couple. It's basically just to show you, like, story progression. The old people have another child, even though the other one died, and they can feel good about children, even though theirs is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Dead kid, by the way.
Yeah. And then Criminal comes into the church and is like, hey, give me my money back, pastor. And they have, like, this moment where he's pointing the gun at him. And this whole time, you're supposed to think, oh, that pastor's going to get shot right in the face. It's going to be crazy. Don't worry. It'll work out. He has plot armor thicker than the product in Joel Osteen's hair.
So back at the hospital, Dr. Rudy is checking out Joe. He has stage 4 cancer, and that's why he's out of jail. He didn't finish up his sentence, but it's on...
It was a sympathy... He's on leave, though. How that works is your sentence isn't communicated. It's, you're on leave.
Yeah, but they expect you to die while you're on leave,
yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
Anyway. And now he not only has cancer because he slept outside to help Lily, he has an infection that his body can't fight because of the cancer.
Don't you die on me, Boz, you bastard! You used to have this haircut! You're a legend! So we cut back to what's happening between Criminal and the pastor, and the dude is almost gonna shoot the pastor, but before he does it, he takes his, I'm gonna call it a mask, it's a bandana and a hoodie, off and reveals his face. And it's like this sort of like weird atheist hate Christians sort of thing, but I don't think the guy's actually an atheist. I just think he's kind of a dick.
So he almost shoots the pastor, but he chooses not to. This is a fun scene for me because he's holding the gun to his face and he's like, do you know where you're gonna go when you die? And the pastor's like, I do, I'll be with Jesus. Very calm, like they do in this kind of scene. But then he doesn't shoot them and walks away, and the pastor looks visibly relieved.
Well, he says, oh, thank God.
I know, like, if you were that confident, you wouldn't be relieved. You'd be like, oh, darn, almost got to heaven. Whoops. I don't know. I'll never understand that aspect of Christianity. And I was a Christian, so I don't know. So now at the courthouse where the EMT is talking utter bullshit. He's talking to the lawyer, and he says, if what I did was a crime, then I'm guilty. Guess what? You're fucking guilty. You're not allowed to preach to people when you're in this job. Off the clock, do whatever you want, but you're not allowed to when you're being paid to save people's lives, tell them they're going to hell as they're dying.
So the lawyer is talking to him, basically warning him, like, this is going to go bad for you. And she's like, what's even in it for you? Because what's in it for me is money, and what's in it for the wife is she wants to hurt you because she thinks you fucked up and ended up killing her husband on accident. And it's got this weird atheists only do things for money thing.
There are organizations like FFRF, they're not doing things for money, they're doing it because they want the Constitution to be followed as far as separation of church and state are concerned, you know? So that's very strange to me. They think it's just for money. It's not. Genuinely, let me tell you, as an atheist, I would have a problem with someone proselytizing to someone on the job as an EMT or a cop or any government employee. It's the same reason that Kim Davies can't put her religion in her work. It's just not something you're allowed to do as a public servant. So they don't show the case itself, but he loses immediately, as you would expect. And we'll finish his story up later, but that's pretty much how that goes. He does a fucked up thing, gets fired. The end. Anyway. So Lily's mom visits Joe on his deathbed, and he wants to see Lily really bad. I guess he's not a pedophile, but he says it reminds him of his daughter. It's a little creepy. They should have got a better actor than the Boz for this to make it seem a little more sympathetic and less creepy. Huge dude wants to spend time with this little girl.
And then next we get a more uncomfortable scene than the one we just showed you with the Boz, which is hard to do because we have Spy Kids girl and PTSD boy, and they apparently really like each other now after sharing coffee for 15 minutes. And then he's like, I gotta go, this isn't right, you know, I'm damaged, blah, 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 the normal bullshit you've heard in every rom-com in your whole fucking life. And then she says, I really care about you. What? Bitch, you just met 15 minutes ago. This is not a very strong bond we're talking about here. The strongest bond you have is maybe you like the same brand of coffee. So Pretty Boy, for some reason, goes back to one of the old gang hideouts, which is the stupidest thing he could have done. His brother Criminal, of course, finds him, and they almost have a fight, but instead Pretty Boy talks about Jesus, and for some reason Criminal listens. The rival gang member from before, you remember? Oh yeah, his name was Nefarious.
Yeah, Nefarious comes back and he tries to shoot Criminal, but Pretty Boy, because he is a Christian, of course, becomes a human shield and jumps in front of the bullets, like fucking Neo. I don't know how he's faster than a bullet, but he apparently was.
And then so Criminal tackles the guy, and then he has this like no moment with Pretty Boy. It's like, Criminal, you're criminal with a K. You're supposed to be hardcore. You say things like yayo to describe drugs, and you listen to Gucci Mane. I don't know what Gucci Mane is, but it sounds gang-related. This is the kind of things you do. You do not cry. He's talking to his dying brother, and Criminal's like, what do you need? And Pretty Boy, who was apparently ready for this death scene because he had props prepared, he puts a cross in Criminal's hands, and he says, believe, and then he fucking dies, and that's the end of his story. And it's like, right before that, it was two gangsters. The whole scene was Pretty Boy and Criminal having a discussion critically about Christianity, and it's like, this'll really reach the blacks. So Nefarious gets up after this scene of death and loss, and he apparently doesn't want to shoot, and he just runs away. I don't understand why he didn't murder the dude. Criminal is running away from Nefarious, and they run to the bridge where all shit happens. And then he runs into oncoming traffic and then the bad guy gets hit by a car and starts a chain fucking reaction. And all of the worst drivers were apparently on the same bridge at the same time because no one's paying attention.
Let me explain how crazy this is, because I wrote down note for note how this accident happens.
I'm ready.
Okay, so everyone's on the move at this point. All the stories are converging now. Criminal, of course, running away and all that jazz. Meanwhile, the bitch lawyer, texting. There's a car that swerves to miss Criminal that stops. The texting lawyer then hits that car. The pastor and the wife and the pregnant girl, because the pregnant girl is now going into labor, they get hit. They don't mean to get hit, though. They, stop on time, but someone behind them hits them. Lily and the old people avoid it because she's on the way to the hospital because fucking Boz wants to see her. But they get knocked off the bridge, so it's, halfway off. It's doing that movie thing that doesn't happen in real life, where it's, kinda off the bridge and tilting and stuff. Okay, so now the baby's fucking coming out, but the mom's injured. The bitch wife is basically saying, oh, there's way too much blood. So clearly something happened in the car accident, and now she's bleeding, not just out of her vagina, but out of other orifices as well. The veteran happens to be hitchhiking in a semi that stops right behind it, but he's able to get and save Lily because he's able to get on the car and get it to balance a little bit so he can pull her out. So the lawyer's car, and she's passed out because an airbag hit her in the face. Her car sets on fire. The EMT happens to be by there. I don't remember if they show how he got there, but he's there.
He's driving. He's just driving. He drives and pulls up.
He's just driving. So the EMT saves her, pulls her out. Now the car is tipping over, and the PTSD guy can't save it alone, so now the EMT guy has to help the PTSD guy pull the girl out. Okay, the baby gets born. The old couple is trapped in their car, the lady gets out, but the husband's leg is broken, so everyone has to help him out.
But it's a bionic leg, Lee Majors!
So now back with the pregnant lady, she's dying, she's with the bitch wife. The bitch wife is like, oh, what's happening? Pregnant lady's like, you always wanted to be there when your child is born. This is the child. Take it. And she's like, you're kind of putting a lot of pressure on me.
I don't think that's legally binding.
So she hands it to her, and the dying pregnant lady's like, promise me that Jesus is real. And they promise her, which they have no right to promise because they don't know that for a fact, but whatever. So everyone gets out of the car, old lady, young girl, and finally Lee Majors gets pulled out just in time for it to fall into the water. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Joe dies without seeing Lily like he wanted because fuck Joe.
The nurse walks in and calls it immediately. She doesn't do anything. Unless he signed a DNR, you bring the fucking crash cart in. He's coding you, bitch.
So in the aftermath of the car accident, and everyone's kind of chilling now, as you do after your car accident, the lawyer asks the EMT why he saved her. He says because Jesus said to love your enemies. How about because it's your fucking job, EMT, man? I get that they imply he may have been fired, but I would expect, maybe I have high expectations of people, if you have EMT training, even if you're not an EMT anymore, if you have someone injured in a car accident, I would expect you to help them. Shouldn't we just expect that? Is that a thing that we're, saying only Christians do now because of Jesus? Not being a fucking dick? That's insane.
I just gotta say, though, how fast the climax is and how jumbled it was. This was the movie climax equivalent of a bukkake scene.
Now we go back to the hospital with Joe again, and Joe fucking comes back to life because fuck Joe. He's been dead for 8 minutes, by the way. They explicitly say he's been dead for 8 minutes. Do you know how long it takes to lose oxygen to the brain and have brain damage? 2 minutes.
Yeah, but
this guy should be the most brain dead, but he's the boss, so maybe it evens out.
The doctor comes in, and the nurse is like, "You gotta see this." And then Rudy / Samwise Gamgee comes in and is like, "I don't know. I don't think it's a miracle." And everyone's adamant that it's a miracle. There is a thing from it gets its name from the Bible. It's called the Lazarus Effect or the Lazarus phenomenon. Or, more accurately, auto-resuscitation after failed cardiopulmonary resuscitation, meaning that a lot of people, not a lot, 38 cases since 1982 in the U.S., where people have received CPR, although obviously the nurse didn't in this scene because she's a garbage nurse. But I'm just saying, this happens. 38 people have done that before, and one of them was found snoring in a mortuary 34 hours after they pronounced her dead. So I'm just saying, it can happen.
What bugs me about the scene the most is the doctor says, we're gonna order some tests to figure it out, and the nurse is like, it's gotta be a miracle. How else do you explain it? Bitch, he just ordered the tests. That's the entire point. He wants to see why. Right. And even Joe, who just came back from the fucking dead, is like, don't bother. I'm fine. Fuck you, Joe, you have cancer.
You're not gonna find anything. By the way, this movie never approaches the fact that he will probably have cancer after the tests, and he's just very fortunate right now, but will probably die very soon.
Is the implication that God healed him of the cancer as well?
The implication is that it is, but they don't ever get the tests back to say, no, still has cancer. Still has all sorts. It's worse now. Time has passed and cancer progressed. And if this was a miracle and Joe is cured, I do hope he realizes that his sympathy leave from prison will end immediately upon the discovery that he is cured, and he will go back to prison. This is the least effective miracle.
So now that everything's wrapping up, the PTSD veteran goes to talk to Spy Kid's girl, and she's like, he brought you back to me, talking about God. So they're both religious now, I think. I don't know. But she's known him all of a day and is super excited to see him. This, people, is how codependent relationships start. And you should not model yourself after these people. They have serious issues that they should work on their own with therapists before they see each other again. Mm-hmm. The EMT finds his wife in the hospital chapel because he went to go see her. She gets saved because it's this fucking movie and no one can be an atheist at the end except for Rudy. Joe does finally get to see Lily, but he probably still has cancer, so fuck Joe. The old couple are still old, and then Dr. Rudy's wife, now reading the Bible on her phone because that EMT did his fucking job, which makes her a Christian. Mm-hmm. And she's mad at the husband for not being a Christian, even though they were both non-Christians like 20 minutes ago. So then the movie just ends with the narration from that same preacher saying how none of us can fully see the whole picture, which I think is the entire point of the movie. We're supposed to be seeing God's divine plan, and even though some of these things seem shitty at the time, it all worked out best for everyone, except for Joe, or Criminal, because Joe has cancer, and Criminal's going to jail.
Or Pretty Boy, or the
he's
pregnant
dead.
Girl who died in birth. Those are both dead. And by the way, at the end, they show Delroy Lindo just walking with his cross. Delroy Lindo, please do not walk into traffic like that. That is dangerous, and that is how the last scene occurred. And also, it was all Delroy's fault that all this happened. Just saying.
It really was. A lot of people died because of him. What a fucking asshole.
Crazy Delroy Lindo trying to start the core of the earth. Trying to prevent Nicolas Cage and Angelina Jolie from stealing cars.
So that's this movie. It was bad. This movie, oh my god, it felt like it took 12 hours to finish. I don't know what it is about this movie, but the fact that it's edited so poorly and they split scenes like into thirds and then pepper them amongst each other for no reason other than they think it's clever. Oh, what a fucking drag. Yeah. Oh, it made the movie feel so much longer than it was.
It was a nightmare. Yeah, it was jumbled. It had much better acting than I'm used to out of Christian films, but it had really poor writing.
This is a movie that if you're a Christian of this stripe, not all Christians, I'd actually assume a lot of Christians would find this film super insulting because it's straw men on both sides. A little bit like God's Not Dead, but almost worse because it paints it as though Christians are this magical thing that, like, have properties unto themselves because of the definition. Very strange. It's a movie that says, look at how great Christians are, you're a Christian, therefore you're as good as the people in this fictional movie. Everyone applaud themselves, yay, pat yourselves on the back. And it's just real insulting to anyone who has any thought into this movie. It's so bad. This is, if you're the kind of people who have friends who get together and you like to watch God's Not Dead and like make fun of it, this is a good movie for that too. It's longer.
And it covers a lot of the normal bullshit you retort with every day.
It's got those shitty tropes, you know. The public servant trying to share Christ but isn't allowed. Mm-hmm. Religious liberty. All that bullshit. So yeah, definitely check it out, and get ready for God's Not Dead 2, because that comes out in April. On April 1st, actually, which made me think it was a joke at first, but it's not.
It's not.
They're just bad at marketing.
But we're good at marketing. You can tell because you should follow me at Bible Reloaded.
Follow me at Hugo Reloaded.
You can also subscribe and get more of our juicy, wholesome, movie reviewy goodness.
If you want, you can check us out at Unpopular Culture. We do more normal movie reviews over there, you know, for movies that don't suck ass.
Click the clickety-clack.
Yeah, you could always donate to our Patreon if you wanted to help us out. We do a once-a-month patron-only hangout. That will be soon. Well, we did 2 this month. probably the week after this comes out, I think,
Somewhere in
should
there.
be the second one. So, I think that's it. Please give us suggestions for movies in the comments, and until next time, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this has been The Bible Reloaded. And this movie was tedious.